The Galactic Council chamber was in chaos. Representatives from 100 species bickered, their voices overlapping in panicked urgency. For the first time in centuries, their authority had been outright rejected. Not negotiated with. Not reluctantly accepted. Rejected. And by whom? A fledgling species barely a century into spaceflight. They refused to sign the Concord, a reptilian envoy hissed, his scales flaring in agitation. They refuse everything, a Zelnari diplomat confirmed, her tendrils coiling in distress. No trade agreements, no territorial treaties, no military pacts. They have cut off all diplomatic channels. This is unheard of, a hulking, armored representative rumbled. Every species joins the Concord. Every species wants our guidance. A holographic display flickered to life, showcasing humanity's brief but meteoric rise. A backwater world, isolated for most of its history, now rapidly expanding across nearby systems. Their technology was primitive by galactic standards, yet their military presence was spreading like wildfire. Worse still, they weren't asking permission. Their refusal to integrate is a direct threat to stability, an elder statesman declared. We cannot allow this kind of defiance to go unchecked. The room fell silent. They had seen this before, species resisting at first, only to be gradually absorbed into the Council's influence through trade, laws, and, when necessary, force. But humanity wasn't resisting. They were ignoring the Council entirely. That was the true danger. A representative from the Vorkar, a species known for their analytical prowess, played intercepted human transmissions. The Council listened in disbelief. Humanity wasn't debating whether to join the Concord. They had dismissed it outright, seeing it as unnecessary at best, a trap at worst. Perhaps they misunderstand our intentions, one envoy suggested. We should. No, the Zelnari interrupted, her voice firm. This isn't ignorance. This isn't arrogance. This is deliberate. That sent a ripple through the chamber. Deliberate rejection meant humans saw the Council as something to be avoided, even opposed. But why? They have no allies, another representative argued. No galactic power backing them. Why turn away from the one force that could protect them? The Zelnari leaned forward, her eyes unreadable. Because they do not believe they need us. The statement was almost heretical. Every species in the galaxy had, at some point, needed the Council's guidance. But humans had examined the offer and walked away. Not out of fear. Not out of desperation. But out of choice. We need to act, a high-ranking official declared. Before their influence spreads. The chamber rumbled in agreement. If humanity refused to join willingly, the Council would have to show them the cost of standing alone. When the message first arrived, humanity barely reacted. A grand interstellar council offering guidance, peace, and inclusion? The idea was met with skepticism, not excitement. Governments analyzed the proposal, intelligence agencies combed through every line, and military strategists studied the patterns of species that had joined before them. The conclusion was unanimous. This was not an offer. It was a slow conquest. Every civilization that accepted the Council's terms followed the same path. At first, they prospered, trade flourished, technology advanced, conflict ceased. But within a few generations, their independence eroded. Their fleets were absorbed into the Council's command, their laws rewritten to match galactic standards, their industries redirected to serve collective needs rather than their own. Some resisted. None succeeded. Humanity had seen this pattern before, written in their own history. Empires that grew not through open war but through economics, treaties, and carefully crafted dependency. This wasn't peace. It was control. So the answer was simple. No. But refusal wasn't enough. The Council would see non-compliance as defiance. That meant preparing for the inevitable. Earth's governments unified under a single initiative, self-sufficiency. They developed independent supply chains, fortified colonies, and built fleets designed not for expansion, but for resilience. They didn't match the Council's technology, but they didn't have to. They only needed to make invasion too costly to consider. More importantly, they weren't alone. The council had many members, some powerful, some weak. But a closer look revealed fractures. Not every species was happy under their rule. Some had lost more than they gained. Some wanted out but lacked the strength to resist. Humans reached out, not to the council, but to the discontented. They shared intelligence, traded resources off the record, and laid the groundwork for something new. An alliance not of subjugation, but of autonomy. The council didn't notice at first. They assumed humanity was simply ignorant of how things worked. That assumption was their first mistake. The second was believing humanity would ever ask for permission. The Galactic Council had always relied on pressure to bring rebellious species in line. Isolation, economic sanctions, and strategic displays of force had never failed before. They assumed humanity would be no different. They enacted Protocol 17, a coordinated blockade of human-controlled space. Trade routes were cut, supply lines severed, communications restricted. The goal was simple: force humanity to the negotiating table through necessity. It didn't work. Instead of scrambling for aid, humanity adapted instantly. Supply chains had been decentralized long before the blockade began. Resource extraction from asteroid fields and moons increased. Black market trade flourished, with independent smugglers more than happy to bypass council restrictions for a profit. What should have crippled them barely slowed them down. Frustrated, the council escalated. A peacekeeping fleet was dispatched, officially to mediate, unofficially to intimidate. It never reached its destination. The fleet was ambushed before it could deploy. Ships vanished into sensor-dead zones, supply depots suffered sudden malfunctions, and command structures collapsed under cyber warfare attacks. Humanity never engaged in direct combat. They didn't need to. They erased the fleet's ability to function before the first shot was fired. The council was stunned. Humanity's technology was inferior, yet their tactics were unpredictable. They didn't fight like a structured military. They fought like an insurgency, adaptive, decentralized, and ruthlessly efficient. For the first time in recorded history, a species had not just resisted the council's authority, but openly defied it. And worse, others were watching. Panic spread through the Galactic Council. Humanity wasn't just surviving the blockade, they were thriving despite it. Every countermeasure failed. Every attempt to pressure them only revealed new weaknesses in the council's own structure. Worse still, other species had noticed. Whispers of defiance turned into open rebellion. Desperate to regain control, the council convened in secrecy. There was only one option left: overwhelming force. A full-scale military operation to subdue humanity before their influence spread further. They mobilized fleets, deployed shock troops, and prepared for a swift, crushing victory. It never came. The moment the first warships entered human space, everything fell apart. Systems collapsed under electronic warfare. Communications were jammed. Supply lines were raided before fleets could even reach their targets. The Council's forces, used to conventional warfare, were blindsided by an enemy that never fought on their terms. Then came the final blow. The rebellion wasn't just a rumor anymore, it was an uprising. Species that had once obeyed the Council without question now turned against them. Stations revolted. Military forces mutinied. Governments cut ties, unwilling to throw their people into a war they no longer believed in. The Council sued for peace. Humanity's response was simple. We don't negotiate with tyrants. The Galactic Council collapsed within weeks. What had ruled the galaxy for centuries crumbled under the weight of its own arrogance. Humanity didn't conquer it. They didn't need to. They just proved it wasn't invincible. And as the dust settled, one truth became clear. The galaxy no longer belonged to the Council. It belonged to those willing to stand on their own.